What do you believe Zionism is, and what is your skew emotionally, physically, rationally on it? Like, what is that?
All right. So,
Nice to meet you. What's your
what's
name?
up? I'm Justin.
Zevi, nice to meet you.
Zevi, nice to meet you. All right. So, what's your particular topic of the day?
Cool. I mean, the topic, we're not determining the topic. We're letting people come in and ask
Okay.
whatever they want. So it's been a real mixed bag of questions.
Okay, and so I'm Jewish. Ask me anything. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that we want to get into the nitty gritty of what's colloquially going on. What is your view on what Zionism is?
Ooh.
I go and get ice cream.
Come sit down.
Yeah, come in. Yeah, get up here.
Get in.
Yeah, no, he's awesome.
All right,
dude.
bring in some seats.
What do you believe Zionism is, and what is your skew emotionally, physically, rationally on it? Like, what is that?
I just have to interject because even before we get to answers, I just respect that the question is, what do you think Zionism is? Not, what do you think about Zionism? Which
Right.
then has all these presuppositions of, because my idea of what Zionism is what Zionism is.
Right.
You're like, well, maybe they see it differently. That's already way more than anyone on the internet is doing. It is a cesspit, yeah.
We've learned today that the internet is not representational of real life. Like
No.
the degree of nuance and thoughtfulness. But actually, I want you to answer that question first.
Okay, yeah. He's the smart one, and I'm here for vibes. No, I did not grow up very Zionistic. I grew up with a very vague sense of Zionism, where it's like, oh, we support Israel, but anyways, back to your studies. Like, Israel's over there. I grew up in Cleveland. So my naive view of Zionism is not, I wasn't aware of like the history behind it and as a political movement and as a colonization movement and I didn't know about the Nakba. To me, Zionism was, oh, you mean like where Jews should have their own space because people keep trying to murder us for no reason? Like, okay, yeah, I'm down with that. Like, I'm super down with that cause. When I saw an Israeli flag up until the past few months, all an Israeli flag ever meant to me is, oh, cool, that's home where I could go if shit hit the fan in America. It's just a place where there's Jews and Jews will take care of Jews.
Right.
That seems like a nice idea. That's all Zionism means. And I think that's what Zionism means for a lot of Jews. It doesn't, a lot of American Jews especially, they don't have this well-educated, researched opinion on like the movement of Zionism through Herzl and through the people who started and how it acts as part, and the way it's related to imperialism and the way it's related to the British. They don't. They're just like, oh, Jews should have a spot. Like, it's nice that Jews have a spot.
I accept that as an expression. There are nuances, though.
Sure.
You have a place to go home. Many that are being subjugated by the ideology are not. And so that is the dichotomy. But like you said, the lack of understanding of the extrapolation of an ideology like that will lead to a thought where, oh, Zionism's just home.
Right.
So I want to hear your perspective on Zionism. You said you don't really have, you have that perspective, which is valuable to understand the average.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
in the past few months, I have done some thinking and some researching, and imagine my surprise when this idea of Israel's just a great place where Jews can go to be free. For the first time in my life, I am looking at it as, wait, does its existence, or the way it is currently existing, that's how I'd say it better, because I think it deserves to exist and should exist, but the way it currently exists, is it causing issues for other people, or is it actually now, I haven't come to strong conclusions yet. I have a lot more research to do, but I'm not going to drown out other people's, if other people's voices are saying, yeah, Israel is subjugating, like, by protecting Jews, it is also doing the opposite of protecting other people. Those are voices worth listening to. So my ideas of Zionism are changing. And I don't identify as a Zionist, but I also don't not identify as Zionist because I still don't know what it means.
Right.
You have that sentiment, that I want to go home sentiment, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I have that same sentiment, and where I come from, I can't visit home. So I have,
Where do you come from, if you don't mind me asking?
like, my dad comes from Haiti, directly from Haiti, came here when he was young. My mom is African American, so I would technically call this home, but this is not really home.
Right.
So I have a complete diaspora where I could go home too, but it's been robbed from me. So that is the opposite side of that coin. That is the opposite side of that.
Some people don't have home.
Exactly. So it's like, I would never tell somebody it's bad to have, like, to value calling somewhere home. But the only home that I know is my parents' house, my grandma's house here.
Yeah.
Here hates me too, just as much as maybe, you know, they hate Jews. They hate the people at the border. They hate the people, they hate anybody who's not quote unquote white, whatever that label means. So that not having a home and that having a home mentality, I think everybody deserves that, want to have a home and to value their home. And I value your perspective on that.
Yeah.
But I value also that you are skeptical enough and engaging with the fact that that ideology might also cause others to be, like, you know, in a homeless position where I'm not necessarily in. I've had a beautiful home growing up. I've had a loving family and I'm privileged on that. However, a historical home, a home where my legacy comes from, not oftentimes, you know, the pride of the crop, the shining jewel that
Yeah.
others might have.
Yeah.
So it's really important that I heard your perspective.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I want to give Zevi a chance.
Yeah, I'm
To
very.
give his ideas on Zionism, and then I after that I actually have a question I want to ask you. But yeah,
The truth is, I think Zach, I think you have like a really honest and sort of like a really human perspective.
I'm gonna keep eating ice cream.
No, I really appreciate it. Like I think sometimes you like undersell yourself.
It's a tactic.
But I wish that people would be like as just transparent and authentic about how they're feeling about something. And I think people hide behind sort of party lines and slogans, and like your willingness just to like stand up and be like, hey, this is how I felt, this is how I feel. There's something really beautiful and like admirable about that. Yeah. And also, and to also reflect what Zach said, like to the nuance of like your questioning, and like the ability to reflect. Like to be honest, I've been living here in Crown Heights for the past few months. I've been living in Jerusalem until now, and I've rarely had a chance to interact with someone outside of the Hasidic Jewish community. It just doesn't. These interactions don't really happen, and the chance to sit down and talk with people of other faiths and other traditions, other backgrounds, and other countries of origin has just been a really beautiful experience.
But what are your thoughts of that?
Yeah.
Weasel out of
Sorry, his background.
So, in a way that's similar but different to Zach, I was not raised in a community which identified as politically Zionistic, which is, I think, like a broad misconception. A lot of people see Jews as a whole and Zionism as a whole and conflate the two as if they're the same thing. There's there's pre-Zionistic Zionism, like what's referred to sometimes as proto-Zionism, which is just the desire of the Jew to return to their homeland. They were exiled. We were exiled by the Romans.
You and 50 other
Yes.
civilizations with
Yes.
the Romans, absolutely.
The effective colony, essentially, through the terrible effects of colony throughout human history. So Jews since forever have been praying and desiring to return to their land, to the land of Israel. But it was not a nationalistic movement. Nationalism only really begins, in the 18th, 19th century. And Zionism as a modern political movement begins then, at the height of German nationalism, the height of when countries are really wanting to take on a national identity. And in that sense, many religious Jews rejected a nationalistic return to Zion, to Israel. There were some who did, and there is a modern form of religious Zionism, which I was not raised as part of. My feeling is, in a way similar to Zach, that Jews do have a very deep and inherent ancestral relationship to the land. And it's not just a question, I think, of safety, because Jews have been persecuted and expelled of almost every country they've ever lived in. It's a question of land, of wanting to return to the cradle. But I think the problem is that in the aftermath of the Holocaust, when there was a sense of desperation for these people, that another colonial empire, England, partitioned the land of Israel in the most terrible way, right? And ignored the fact that there were people existing there already, and just dumped a bunch of traumatized people that had just witnessed the most brutal massacre of their families. And it created the most like perfect shitstorm in a way that we're still living through the nightmare of that reality. And I think, and Zach said this before with previous people that have stopped to ask us questions, there has to be like an acknowledgement of the reality. The reality is that there's one region where both now Jews are living and both Muslims are living, both Palestinians and Arabs and Christian Arabs and Christian Palestinians, and no one's leaving, like no one's getting rid of anyone. How do we like go forward and live together? And I think that if we can like accept the reality and begin to ask, how do we unpack the systems that have perpetuated the ways that we see each other not as humans, not as individuals, but we see each other as colors, as ethnicities, as races. I think if we can begin to see each other as humans, we can begin to sort of unwork some of the hatred or a lot of the hatred that's really developed. And I do believe that Jews and Palestinians can live together. I spent a lot of time with Palestinians, spent a lot of time in Israel. And the general consensus that I get is that when you're speaking to people in power and politics, they're there for the perpetuation of conflicts. They're just talking about like security and defense, which often just means war. But when you speak to the people, they're not talking about military. They're talking about how can I just live and raise my kids and make an honest wage and come home with safety on both sides. And that's the only thing that I've heard speaking on the ground to people.
Right.
And which gives me hope.
Yeah. So how does it make you feel to see the use or the term of Zionism being used as an excuse to push out Palestinian people?
So because I don't have such a strong emotional bond to Zionism, if someone were to say, hey, there are people in Israel and they're using this concept called Zionism to do bad things to Palestinians, to push them out of their land, to strip them of their rights, I would say, don't do that. And also, yeah, like that, they shouldn't be doing that. If someone were to say they're using Judaism, that would hit much closer to home. Because what does that mean? Like, are they using the religion I grew up in, which, you know, I have a very complicated relationship with. And if you read the Bible, Jews did do a bit of colonization because God said, hey, Israel's your land. And we walked in there and we some shit up to take it. And that's not something that people are comfortable talking about. But like, yeah, I don't know if you can inject in what's the word I want to use? Inject. You can't use God and be like, well, God gave us the land. Like, okay, like where's it in, like you can't. I'm much more uncomfortable with like when people use God as a reason to do injustice. That like personally bothers me on just a very deep level.
I completely agree.
Because politics, okay, that's human beings squabbling, but then you're like going to bring in like divinity and be like, well, he said so.
You're lumping in all this beauty.
Yeah. Do you think that the separation of church and state is something that could really benefit
Israel?
Most countries.
Most countries, yeah. I think so. I haven't really grappled with these ideas in a very deep way, and I know you just told me I should stop self-denigrating myself, but like these do feel like above my pay grade. But yes, I just don't see that ever being a good thing. I'm a big fan of like liberal democracy.
We were just talking about like we were.
we just came from having a really deep convo, so to come into this is
that we came up with like two was that democracy and monarchy are the same thing at ideal levels. At the ideal, a perfect democracy is a perfect monarchy. When you get into reality, the gray area and the mud is what you have to wade through. And that's why before I asked, is it realistic to truly separate church from state? Because church creates communities, creates beauty, creates art, creates infrastructure, creates things,
creates culture.
Through its institution that create then those institutions which are governing, legislative, and allow for society. So to what extent can we do that? We don't even know. So that's why you saying, "Oh, it's above my pay grade."
Well, to have them separate doesn't mean not to have church. Church can be there, and church can still be there doing what it does best, creating community. It just doesn't have to have ruling.
Right.
I mean, first of all, in America, we don't have separation of church and state. Look what just happened in Alabama. Like, we did a big oopsie.
Look at what you grow up singing every day when you go to school is one nation under God. And like that is instilling in you the fact of church and state being, two things that
I'll be
must
honest,
be
I get
together.
inspired by it though.
The people that have
You
been
get
adopted-
inspired by
it. I like that. I think it's a very patriotism, which has such a bad taste in people's mouths nowadays in 2024 in the younger generation. It's really just a romantic idea. Don't we all want to believe that God blessed the United States to be this beacon of light in the world? Don't we want to believe that, even if it's not true? We want to believe it.
Yeah.
We want to believe it so bad. I have welled up during the national anthem in my day, like, you know.
I can relate.
I don't think I can either. But there's an old study, and I wish I had more information or the name of the study, but there was a poll that was if people would rather date outside of their religion or their political views. And so originally the results were that 70% of people would date outside of their political views and 30% of people would date outside of their religion.
Makes sense.
They've redone this study and it is almost perfectly flipped. So now 70% of people would not date outside of their political study and 30% of people would not date outside of their own religion.
Huh.
Fascinating. It's funny because politics has become a sort of religion
Yes.
for the secular world. The
Yeah.
secular world loves to separate itself from religion, but it's all a religion in and of itself.
Yeah.
So we have to reconstitute what terminology we use, and that's uncomfortable. And that's why conversations like this one are great, because we get to create new terms for it. We get to create new understandings. Your perspective is value. Take that as what it is. Your perspective is your perspective. My perspective, Kobe's perspective, your perspective, all creates a vector for us to create new terms, new understandings. Because secularism is a religion as much as they love to say that it's not. Church and state are the same thing. It's an organization of humans into a way of life that is beneficial for a society. It's the same thing. As conceptually, it's just that we have to get new words for it.
Yeah.
Or we just have to reinterpret what these words mean. But what is your view on that?
No, I want to add something to the previous question. And I noticed that we're sitting here literally at the feet of Confucius, Lao Tzu, Moses, David, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Peter, Paul, and Asclepius, Sophocles. Like, there's something very cool about like being able to have like really foundational grounding questions about society, about life here, like in a day and age where we're told that that's not possible anymore. And we're told that we don't have, attention spans anymore. And I think it's bull.
You give me enough Adderall.
Don't we all?
I think that there was an idea which there was a French Jewish philosopher by the name of Emmanuel Levinas. He was like a very beautiful thinker and beautiful human, and he had this notion that that the face of another human like speaks to us, and what it says is "Thou shalt not kill." Like the grounding of morality is the encounter with another human, and I think that any time that any ism gets in the way of that, whether it's socialism, Zionism, secularism, whatever the politics of religion is, we've lost something fundamental to our humanity. And I think that what's happened in today's day and age is that we've stopped to engage with the face of the other. And there's something deeply like morally compelling about seeing the other human face in front of you. And to me, seeing what's being perpetrated in the name of religion, in the name of politics, in the name of it feels like something of our humanity is being stripped away, and it's not allowed to show up, which is really why we wanted to sit down here and do this in person, because we're not having the opportunities to look at like the other in the face and really ask honest questions. So and I see that happening. I see that happening in Israel, Palestine. I see both sides just looking at each other as the other, as an enemy, as an ideology, without seeing the human face. I don't think that we can stare into the eyes of the other, see them as human, and then perpetuate violence against them. I don't think that's morally possible. And
well, that's also, and I was just talking about this earlier because I've been studying, history through objects at school. And so the biggest thing that I've learned is that all civilizations relatively run the same course, over 2,000 years per, right? And it is only until very recently in human civilization that the human life has had value. The Romans could go and take over a place, and if they fought too hard, they would kill everybody, the babies, the kids, and they would go and have a drink after like it was nothing, right? So it's only until recently that we have really put more value on human life. And like, as much as all this stuff shit happens in the world that we live in, we still live in, hands down, the safest, most inclusive, most open society that has ever existed. Ever. Not to say that there isn't so much more that needs to be done to progress to a point where we can really just look at each other as just individuals and humans and as this common, like, people who are just trying to figure it out and survive. But we are in the safest place we've ever been in the entire, grand scheme of human civilization. And I think that gets forgot, because in order to evoke change, you need to push imminent danger.
I hear what you're saying, and I think there's an important point to recognizing the progress, so making sure the bike's the progress which we've made as a society, because I think that if we don't believe that we've ever made progress, then it's hard to believe that we can make progress, and then why do anything? I think that in many ways we've come an incredible way to respecting the inherent dignity of the human being and the rights of the human. And I agree with that. I agree with that. In many, many ways, we've progressed in phenomenal ways. And remembering that can remind us that there's still a far way to go, and that we're capable of going there.
I have a question for you. Well, okay. So you're in university now?
Yeah,
right?
Both of us.
Which university?
Parsons.
Oh shit, Parsons. Okay. Here we go. So now we get into the uncomfy stuff.
We're designers, first off. We're not
how old are you
historians.
guys, by the way?
I'm 22.
I'm 22 too.
Amazing. By the way, I was just mentioning to him today, I was like, bro, the 22-year-olds and 23 and 24, they looking mad older. I'm 30. I think you guys look older than me, but maybe that's just my
Like older than you?
Maybe not older than me, but like
I'm like,
everyone looks old. Maybe not you. I'll be honest. Here's my question. And I want honesty, and like, there's no offense taken at all, but I want to know, because I went to an all Jewish, all men's school, not very hot, not very cool. Got a degree in psychology. I don't know what it's like to be on a young liberal college campus today, and I definitely don't know what it's like to be to talk about Islam, Palestine, and Judaism on those.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like on campuses right now, and on your campus specifically, there is an othering happening to Israelis where there's, again, being critical of a government, being critical of a government's policies towards, let's say, Palestine is 100% okay and valid and important.
Sure. But
do you feel like, have you seen it cross the border into, oh, that person's Israeli, they're probably a piece of shit?
Never.
I am honestly surprised to hear that, and my surprise to hear that means that some algorithm on the internet has made me surprised to hear that.
I'm like, and that's for me personally, I have never seen that happen at our school, especially.
Have you?
Our school is all for the people who are from every walks of life. They fit in or don't fit in, or everybody.
Like an Israeli student would be comfortable on your, not just Jewish, an Israeli.
Absolutely. We have Israeli teachers. In fact, there's a girl in one of my classes who's Palestinian, and she has a teacher who's Israeli, and they have very interesting conversation, but can still have conversation.
I'm honestly so happy to hear that, because I think the internet got to me, because I thought things were worse. I thought there was a breakdown on campuses.
The internet is that all of these algorithms are put in place specifically. Everything you see is specifically curated to you.
Oh, to create outrage,
So
because outrage creates clicks.
whatever you're thinking, whatever you're doing research about, whatever you're interested in is going to show up. And so if you're Jewish American, and the things going on in Israel and Palestine right now, of course that algorithm is going to target you with propaganda,
Rage bait.
Genocide. You know
Rage
what I
bait.
mean?
I appreciate that. I'm happy to hear that answer, truly. But I wonder if I feel like you have a different answer.
I don't have a different answer,
Oh,
but I do.
okay.
I actually take part in protests to support the Palestinian struggle.
Sure.
Because of just friends, people that I know that have been directly impacted by what's going on, and also a knowledge of the history through my culture. I support Palestinian autonomy, but that at protests we often get people who are Israeli, and they come and they're usually hostile to us, and it's disheartening. And you fuck you, whatever. But I hate that.
Yeah.
So one day, a girl, she came and she was talking very delicately, and she said, I'm Israeli, I'm a Zionist, but I don't like our government. And she was talking to everybody else, and then she came to me, and I was talking to her, and she was on the verge of tears, saying that she lost people. She knows people. She was in the IDF for, I forget how long, but she was in the IDF. She has seen certain things. She saved certain people. And I said, you know what? Beyond the IDF, beyond Zionism, beyond Hamas, beyond the institution of Israel, beyond anything, we are humans. And love can happen between you and me, you and others, us and each other. And she told me she doesn't feel safe here. And I said, I don't feel safe here either. And you know why? Because of these labels that we've brought up. Because you are a Zionist, you identify as a Zionist openly, and that has invited so much hatred because it's vitriol. It's emotional.
And I
That's
wonder,
unfortunate. But you have to understand that you shouldn't identify as a Zionist anymore. You should identify as a human.
Right.
You are Israeli of origin. You are Jewish of origin.
Right.
Well, see,
And
that might be a little problematic to say, though. Not problematic, but like, because we began this conversation by saying how much I respected that you asked me what Zionism meant to me. Instead of I don't think we can ever tell someone you shouldn't identify as something. What we should ask is, what does that label you chose to identify as mean to you? Because I think it might mean something different to me, and maybe we can find common ground. She even said she's critical of the government.
Right.
That doesn't seem like the big bad evil boogeyman Zionist that we've been talking about.
No,
that
and
seems like an intelligent individual who's like, no, Zionism means she wants a country. She doesn't want to hurt people.
Palestinians do too. And
I bet she wants.
Everybody does. And yet some countries are able to exist in peace.
Yeah.
And some countries are not. And that's why she said, so you don't condemn Hamas. I said, I do. I don't like Hamas. I don't like Israel. Israel as a country, I don't know if their existence is warranted anymore, because I don't think the U.S.'s institution as a country is warranted because of the genocide they enacted on the indigenous people here. Country and humanity should be separated, just like church and state is stated to do. Humanity is humanity. I love you, you love me as humans. Our ideologies may not love each other.
Right.
And so we have to separate ourselves from our ideologies and craft new ones that can perpetuate us into a more human future. And that's what I shared with her. And then I noticed that, some of the other protesters were hounding her, and it made her uncomfortable, and she ended up crying and going away. And that made me sad. That made me sad because I want to have this conversation.
I can't apologize on behalf of the Israel counter protesters who came and were antagonistic. I think that is a personal moral failing, not indicative of any movement or of any religion. As a person, take responsibility. Do not show up to a protest with antagonism. But it sounds like this girl, if you show up with gentleness and you show up with like, let's start a conversation, even if you're wrapped in a Israeli flag, if you come with gentleness, you should be treated with gentleness and you should be treated with a conversation.
Absolutely.
Don't come with antagonism that goes for both sides. Like that creates sides, the antagonism. And
off of your original question, you said you're from Israel, right?
No, I'm from Australia. I've been living in Israel for a few years.
Okay, and do you feel here in New York that you have been targeted or have felt antagonized in any way, shape, or form?
It's interesting actually. There's a reason why we're sitting here and doing this right here in specific, which is related to the conversation we've been having. A few weekends ago, myself and a friend who was here with us earlier, we were walking on Saturday down the street, and there was a pro-Palestinian protest happening right here. There was a van parked right here, and there was a woman with a megaphone leading the protest. And there were a bunch of Jews who were walking on the other side of the street, and they were like warning us, like, guys, stay away. There's a protest happening. It might not be safe. And we said, actually, no, we're actually gonna go and we're going to see what's happening. We're going to show up, and we're going to show up with our humanity first. And we walked right alongside. We walked right through the protest. And it was very interesting. We got kind of mixed reactions from people. Some people were a little antagonistic and hostile. Some people were appreciative that we showed up. Some people were curious, like what are you doing here? And we had like a array of interesting encounters with people. And overall, because I think we were able to show up like with our humanity first, we were able to be received that way, and we were able to be seen. And people made assumptions of us. People assumed that we were Zionists. The friend who I was with, Meyer, he actually comes from a very anti-Zionist religious community, for example, and we were able to have those more nuanced conversations with people. So I forgot what the question was.
Do you feel antagonized?
Oh, do I feel antagonized? Right. So part of why I wanted to sit right here was to like this very space that was filled with that like intensity, which I respect intensity, but also with sometimes people like just making assumptions about the other and that causing hatred. We wanted to do just the opposite and be like, hey, we're actually gonna really open a space. I think on the contrary, I put myself into a space where there may have been antagonism, and because we're able to show up human first, I did not experience antagonism. There was antagonism directed towards us, but I didn't feel it. I know that sounds a little like bizarre or like cliche to say, but
you were probably met with the same amount of antagonism that someone wearing a keffiyeh would feel if they showed up to an Israel rally right now, even if they showed up in a gentle mode, just because there is such distrust being sown between the two types of people right now. And it just takes a little bit of time, I think, to break down that barrier. You know? Emotions are high.
And media like this one is very important because there's too much media where it's like, oh, the Jews do this, and it's like, oh, the Muslims do this.
Yeah.
Some of them do.
Right.
Just like the narrative about black people in this country. Oh, they do this, they do that. Some of them do.
Right.
And then you're going to take census data from the skewed perspective of the propagandists and use that to justify what you're doing.
Right.
There's so much media dissemination of just divisiveness that I think just needs to be dissolved and reimagined in a how can we move forward together, and what does that look like? What is that represented like? I'm so happy that we're able to do
This is great.
Yeah.
No,
Truly,
this has been the most rich and rewarding conversation we've had today by far. Yeah.
I wanted to say what I really appreciate about this too is like, and I don't know if you guys get a lot of people like us who just come over and are happy to just have an open conversation like this, is like, how could I ever judge either of you for being Jewish? You know what I mean? Like, how could I ever judge somebody as an individual for one aspect of one small portion of one blip in time of this one specific thing? And so it's like, to be able to sit here and just talk as humans is truly lovely, and not have an agenda that either of us are trying to push. So
the only agenda is conversation. By the way, the bank thing is true. We do run those though. Yeah, that shit's true.
Prove my loan.
I think it's so true. Like,
Doing a good job.
I think the greatest threat to humanity is when we stop, when we see each other as some sort of label or some sort of, and I've experienced that. I've walked down the street and people just like look at me, and whether they see me just as a man or just as a white person or just as a Jew or whatever they're putting onto me, right? And that becomes the entirety of who I am. And there's an invisibility in that. And there's a part of me screaming out, being like, hey, I'm a full human. And I think that, likewise, like the ability to sit down and to not just assume not to assume that we know everything about someone because we put them in one tidy category or a few tidy categories, being like
liberal.
Yeah.
Right.
With politics as well. Like I think even people on the opposite side of a political aisle, they're still both human, and they still can, like, not only can sit down and discover each other's humanity, but need to. It's omnidirectional. I think.
I'm getting worried this whole time.
But wait, I have a question on that. Do you feel as if you are put into a box based on how you physically express, how you choose to physically be? Because we can relate on that.
Yeah.
I feel like oftentimes people put me in a box of how I physically express, even though it's a culmination of my humanity.
Right.
What is your view on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. I present very visibly Jewish, and very proudly so, and I've done that my entire life.
As you should.
And I've definitely experienced many times, particularly in places where Jews were not as common. You know, in New York, it's being Jewish is like almost part of being New York in some ways. But I've been in like really random parts of this globe where people, as we were saying before, may have not even like had a real encounter with a Jew and see me for being a Jew. And part of me is proud to be that and honored and feels the weight of that responsibility to be like, oh, they're looking at me as a Jew. But part of that also feels like, hey, I wish you could see me also as a human. And I think,
little guy.
yeah. And I think I actually revel in being able to like challenge people's assumptions and people make all kinds of assumptions and just being able to subvert them and just to surprise people and be like, surprise them with my humanity and be like, oh, I didn't know Jews did X, Y, and Z. I didn't know that Jews, you know, whatever the end of the sentence is. And that's been, and I wonder how that's been for you as well. Being able to like break people's assumptions and stereotypes.
It's just something that I think about in a very conceptual way anymore, because of the fact that I've recently come to figure out how constraining labels truly are. Yeah. Because we can be a part of a group, but not be a representative for that group. Yeah. We can have certain insider information on what the happenings of the group truly are and are truth. But the complete edge case nuances of that group, we cannot speak to without speaking to a majority of that group. And so grouping in and of itself, labeling in and of itself has just been such a contentious topic for me, because sometimes I come to things that I can't even label. That's why I keep a journal, because the English language, and not even sometimes beyond the English language is and combining it in ways and in images and ways that I feel and I see and I hear. It's just there, that can only be that way of expression. There's no language to describe it. And so it's been so alien to me to be labeled, to be grouped, and then to be treated as something that I'm not, because I feel, okay, this is useless, because at the end of the day, I want to see you feed your kids. At the end of the day, I want to see you go to get education for free. At the end of the day, I want you to be able to ride the bus to where you need to go, just like in the train to where you need to go, just like everybody else. I want your services to be the same as my services. But you look at me as if I don't see that. Yeah. And it's frustrating. Yeah. And it's just, oh man, it's just the whimsies of this world.
Well said, my man. I just want you to know, Zevi, that I will never see you as anything other than an Australian. That's all you are to me. Honestly, sometimes it's like a win. You got to take your wins in life where you can find them. You ever see someone that's like, I don't know, maybe their dating profile is them in like a trucker hat holding a fish, and you're like, Republican, and the guy's like, I'm for prison reform. And you're like, what? And then you see like some girl in like a choker necklace and all vintage, and she's like hardcore Trump fan. Like, it's honestly a win. It's like, good. At least you're not in a label. At least you're not in a label. Like, at least humans can still surprise us, you know?
This is a world of surprises.
Yeah.
It's a world of emergence.
Yeah.
And emergence is constantly evolving. There's always a new thing. You could be a fish holding Republican visage with.
Do you do psychedelics, by the way? Because you talk like you do. I feel like you're riding the wave, the light, fantastic, my friend.
Wave.
Yeah.
The wave is so important. You have to be able to take the highs just like you take the lows, because the highs are what give you that reprieve, but the lows are what give you understanding and humanity and empathy.
Snap.
Like, absolutely.
I'm so happy with this conversation. I personally have to go soon, so I'm gonna end for me. If you guys want to continue,
shall we get on this?
you'll come with me. Okay.
Well,
one more time, your guys' names.
Kobe. And yours again? Zach.
Zevi.
Justin.
Zach?
Johnson or Justin?
Justin.
Zach. Yeah. All right, homies.
Can I give you guys hugs?
Yeah, let's do
such
it.
an amazing open
I used to
conversation.
talk on the mic like, yes, you can give me a hug.
It's been an absolute pleasure